Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, in a kind of an awkward way, I want to present you my book in a kind of exotic presentation. It's a book video presentation. Yeah, and I've structured my presentation in 4 main categories, starting with the main character. Then I will tell you something about the plot. Next step is to read something out, and last but not least, I will give you my own opinion. The first thing you recognize is where's the author, but I think the author is one of the, don't know how to say, most boring parts in every of your presentation, so I just kind of kicked him out in this presentation. Okay, to start with the main characters is also quite easy for me because in this book there's only one main character, and this is how you can see on the cover, Chris McCandless, who wants to be one in the nature. Christopher, his whole full name is Christopher Johnson McCandless, in this book aka Alex Super Trump. Is a very intelligent young man and who believes in life in the nature, who wants to breathe to nature, to feel the nature, except alone, of course. And before he enters the nature, he spends all the time, whole his energy in school stuff, and in his career, and he kind of don't wanna this life anymore. Okay, then I will start now with the plot. Into the Wild is a true story which brings me directly to the plot. And yes, this is kind of a phrase you can write now down for Mr. Luch. McCandless grows up in a wealthy Virginia suburb in Washington DC, and is a very gifted and happy young guy who's filled with lust for life and passion. After graduating from high school, McCandless spends one summer alone on a road trip across the country, just with a car, and during which he finds out that his father had a second family during Chris's childhood. And McCandless returns home and starts a new student's life at the Emory University. By the time he more and more drifts away from his friends, and he just keeps barely in touch with his parents. He'll let his parents think that he's interested in school, his life, and in law, but instead he donates all his savings, which are a little bit over $25,000 anonymously to a charity organization. Gets in his car and drives away for a very long time, and he never really contacts his family, his parents again. Yes. Not too long after leaving Atlanta, his car gets crashed by a flash flood, which wets the engine very hard, so he's not able to drive any longer in this car. So he has to hitchhike around the northwest, and he sometimes gets some jobs, but he stays nowhere for a very long time. After 2 years of traveling, he creates a plan to go to Alaska, to be one with nature, to really feel it alone. And this was his biggest dream his whole life, and to live in the wilderness completely alone. He prepares himself 2 months with reading books about eatable plants or hunting stuff. Yeah, and he spends 16 weeks to find a nice place he wanted to stay. And when he finally arrives to Alaska, he finds shelter in an old wrecked yellow bus. Because of his food compactness, he loses more and more weight over the time, and in a very stressful situation, he mixes some toxic berries, he mixes some toxic berries with an eatable potato plant. This leads to a very long and to a very painful death. And this is the end where I wanted to read something out. It's kind of the end of the book. On the other side of the page, which was blank, McCandless penned a brief adios. I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye, and may God bless you all. Then he crawled into a sleeping bag his mother had sewn for him and slipped into unconsciousness. He probably died on August the 18th, 112 days later, after he had walked into the wild. 19 days before 6 Alaskans would happen across the bus and discover his dead body inside. One of his last acts was to take a picture of himself, standing near the bus under the high Alaska sky, on one hand holding his final notes toward the camera lens, the other raised in a brave farewell. His face is horribly emaciated, almost skeletal. But if he pitied himself in those last difficult hours, because he was so young, because he was alone, because his body had betrayed him and his will had let him down, it's not apparent from the photograph. He's smiling in the picture. And there's no mistaking the look in his eyes. Chris McCandless was at peace, serenely as a monk gone to God. Yeah, I wanted to thank you. Yeah, last but not least, my own opinion. I think the book is sometimes a little bit boring. It's sometimes, except in the end, very sad. Yes, but I think we are all old enough to stand over that, and so this leads me to recommend this book to any of you guys who wants to read a kind of a nature-based book. And sometimes it's really very boring because he describes over whole 5 pages some landscapes or some nature views, and yeah, but all in all, John Krakow did a very well job in my opinion. Yes. If you now have any questions, you can just ask me, and thank you for your attention. Maier bro out.